for the pom-pom, I'm going to start with my 1/4 inch flat, and I'm going to just base coat where I want it to be nice and dark along the top of the hat where the pom-pom is going to lie. So I'll just apply that black green just loose there, 1/4 flat. Give my brush a wipe off, and then I'm going to pick up Thicket just on the corner of the dirty brush, and with my brush up on the chisel, I'm going to chisel Thicket down into, and keep reloading in Thicket, flatten on the palette, back and forth into the black green. So it is Thicket and black green. As my black green starts to become dry, I'll just pick up a little more on the brush so that it's going to blend into that black green. So I'll just pull a few more little wispies of Thicket outwards. And then I'm going to take and pick up Laurel and a little bit of Spa Blue. So a little of Spa Blue with Laurel. And I'm just going to chisel those into this paint. So you see how it's becoming, just layering them over. I'll flatten my brush again, Laurel, Spa Blue, flatten to the chisel. Always keeping the lighter color up to the top. And I just want to chisel these fine little pieces coming inwards so that they become the little highlighted strands on our pom-pom. Again, Laurel, Spa Blue. Keep flattening your brush to the chisel back and forth. And I'll bring a few more of the Spa Blue, the lighter ones. See how I'll pull a few just a little bit lower now? So this is bringing the highlight and the little strands on the pom-pom a little bit closer. Gonna give my brush a wipe, pick up a little of that black green again, a little of my Thicket, just coming from the bottom, just kind of loosely coming out through here and there, just dabbing in. So you see how it's pulling a little bit of shadow back out into my pom-pom, so that I don't have any solid dark areas, but yet I still have them to create some depth in the pom-pom. I think I could use a little more of the light over here. Super. All right, so that is our pom-pom. I'm going to wet coat using my lunar blender with my base coat color. Always wet coat with your base coat color. I give my brush a wipe. I'm going to pick up the mix that we've made on my lunar blender, give it a scrunch, and then I turn my brush on the side of the chisel and I'm just going to loosely scratch in some fur. You will lose the strength as you go because you are blending into wet bittersweet. So I wipe my brush off. Now I pick up some of our black-brown mix, and unevenly, it's like we're shading coming in from the outer edges. But you want it uneven. We don't want it to look like we've got a dark trim around everything. So I just nice and softly scratch inwards, wipe my brush off, and now I'm going to pick up my highlight, my extra highlight, which is some burlap, and just gently brighten it up a bit. We're not looking to add too much to the center of his body. It's kind of tucked in there. His arms and legs will have a lot more. So at this point, I'll go over and I'll do the little part on his butt. Again, the same way, pick up our mix, scratch in some highlight. It doesn't get too much light over there either. Wiped my brush, pick up my dark shading, scratch that in. Uneven. The whole key is uneven. We don't want to see a straight line around anything. Now I'll come to this leg, it's tucked under the scarf. We haven't got the mittens base coated or the scarf, and if we go on our shoes that I've gone ahead and base coated, it doesn't matter because we're going to base coat those afterwards. So I've now got my highlight color, and with the legs, and you're following the direction, okay? And it's kind of more to the middle. And I pick up my dark. Every time I'm wiping the brush to remove that previous color, I don't want to wash the brush because it's going to end up getting wet and it will thin our paint. And we want to have that, as much of the scratchy effect that we can get from our Lunar Blender. I'm going to go back in over here now. I would do this because the arm last being on top. It's resting on top. And again, I'm not concerned about getting on my mitten. I'm more concerned about staying away from the mitten and leaving that little bit of trim that we're not shading in or highlighting in. So always go right to your edge. Now, wipe my brush, pick up my highlight mix. Now, this fur ends up looking like kind of patchy, blended in fur. We will come back in the very end if we want to add a few fine detail ones with our rake or comb. Once it's done, all his shading is on him. Wipe, pick up my dark now. Uneven. So I'll just keep stressing this uneven. Remember, you want some to come out long, some shorter, so it doesn't look like a straight line of dark. Now pick up my burlap. You always got to remember to scratch the other color, previous color off your brush. And the highlight might look bright, but it dies down. See how it died down in here? Over here. So you can go back and dry scratch a bit more on, just to pop up your highlight. But it does die down because we're working wet on wet. Okay, same effect of what happens on fabric when you're working wet on wet. Okay, so I apply my wet coat, white brush, pick up. And you see the direction, how I'm going to curve as I'm coming here. This is going to give his arm a shape. Wipe, pick up my dark. Come back from the cuff and along there a bit. Wipe the brush. We can always go back at the very end and add a little dry brush of shading if you want to bring in a bit more. When you're adding your highlight, always start where you want it to be the brightest. So right here, I would start with my highlight there because that's the top of his arm and I'm wanting it to be the brightest. So, and this one just disappears every time I look back. Okay, so there's his little body, and now we'll go up to his forehead. Now we bring the face, the black brown from the face after, up into there after we've done the white cheek patches, these part eyebrows, whichever we're going to call these, because they're kind of weird. It's really part of his face, but we would bring that, the edges afterwards with our comb or rake, and that's when we'll bring some fine ones up into here. So I'm wanting you to see that his forehead has a little bit longer scratches of fur, and the center is kind of left a little darker. It's like he's got a little part up the middle or something. But remember, I talk about it, that I'm scrunching my brush when I go on the palette. So that kind of splays open the bristles. Wiping it off, I'm going to pick up, and a lot of times when I pick up my dark, I can pick it up on just the half the brush so that I don't get overdosed on it. It's not going to come in too much. So that looks a bit better there. Okay, wipe my brush, and now we're going in for the highlight. And this is the burlap and the highlight again. And we will come in here later with a few with our comb or rake and enhance them, because these will die down in here. But the comb or rake will give us a nice fine hair. So there's our little highlights scratched in, and we will, I kind of went a little flat there, so see how I can just chisel that back a bit uneven. And once we put his hat on, we may want to pull a few little hair up onto there, so we'll play with our comb or rake afterwards. So this is how we're doing the fur on him, nice and scratched, while the paint is wet, a section at a time. What we're pardon me, what we're going to do for the tail, I'm going to just scratch in down the middle, basically, like we did on here, some of my bleach sand, and then I'm going to take a little bit on the dirty brush. So I've just got it on one side of the brush, so I'm going to put the brown to the brown, and I'm just going to scratch into the tail. Pick up a bit more bleach sand as it's needed. Now I'm going to flip my brush because the dark bit of the tail is kind of tucked away underneath the guy's little butt. So I'll just put a little of that dark there. We're wanting to have, I wipe my brush, just the bleach sand scratched in the middle. And I can take a tiny bit of warm white on the dirty brush and just scratch a little of that there. Okay, so you can choose to do all of your light sections, or you can go to, now this is my black brown base coated, so I'll just go ahead and I will just back and forth chisel like so. Both sides. I'll put bittersweet, just a little bittersweet. You're not going to notice it as much until it dries, but the bittersweet will be in the middle. And then I'm going to take just a little bit on the dirty brush of the burlap and just put a little of that. I don't want it to be bright, bright. So we are wanting, I'll just nice and lightly scratch between these two again, just to uneven. Do you see how I'm trying to make it look a little bit? And we'll play back and forth with here because I'm going to wet scratch bleach sand again, and I'll repeat my way all the way to the end of the tail, the same thing. So again, it's going to be the bleach sand in the middle. Pick up a little of the bittersweet on the one side of the dirty brush, bittersweet to the, and my bleach sand is to the middle. And I can flip that around over here too. Give it a clean, just kind of strengthen that. I want to make sure that they're looking like they're following the direction that his little tail furs are going. And then again, just a little of the warm white in the very second. In fact, very center. All right, so now I'm going to be on to the next one again. All right, same thing as our dry brushes. They work absolutely perfect for that. So I'm going to come in the section of his face, just kind of like, we'll call it cheeks. I'm taking, now he's been dried, he's base coated in black brown, but right now what I'm going to do, whoops, if I get him under the camera it might be a little better, right? Okay, so I'm putting in a wet coat of bittersweet. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of our base coat mix and just scratch it in there. Now I'm giving this the direction. It's just a little bit of that base coat mix on the dirty brush into this wet bittersweet. This is inside this section. Okay, so that's our highlight on his cheeks, basically. And now I've gone there. I'm going to pick up a tiny little bit of burlap. I don't want too much. Just to the middle of this. Just a little bit more of a highlight. That's it. Clean my brush. And I'm going to just scratch off. So now I'm back into my black brown. And I'm scratching from the outer edge outwards into our bleach sand area. Still continue to pick up my black brown. Even though that bleach sand area is dry right now, it doesn't matter. And I just scratch backwards into my highlight. So the edges, his face is really quite dark, okay? It's a lot of this black brown. And we'll play with bringing some fine little lines afterwards out onto his scarf and that once we get his scarf done. But for now, you see how I've just unevenly come into this highlight area? Same thing here. I don't want to have a flat edge. We're just bringing that in there right now. So that's not too bad. Okay. Clean off my brush. Now we're going to go into our bleach sand. So I'm picking up bleach sand and I'm going to come back into the area. You can't see anything because it's bleach sand on bleach sand. And I'm going to take a little bit of bittersweet on the corner of the brush. This is what we did at the tail edges. And I'm just going to scratch the bleach sand and the bittersweet along the outer edges. So it's bleach sand, little bit of bittersweet. We're not looking for a ton. It's not by any means a double load or anything. It's just a little bit. I'm going to turn the brush now so that the bittersweet is outwards. And then I'm cleaning the brush off. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Clean my brush off. Pick up a little bit of warm white. And I'll just scrunch that in the middle. Now we are going to use the greener or comb or rake, whichever again, and pull in a few, and again our liner. So, but right now, I'm scratching this. What I'm going to do now is underneath his mouth. So we've got his lip kind of, his opening of his mouth, nice and dark base coated. But if I dry brush away from there, do you see how that's creating our nice little bit of a shadow? I'm going to do the same thing. This is my black brown, just around the bottom of his nose as well. Just, we're going to be working in this area as well after, but it just gives a little bit of a back shadow without having to do shading or anything like that. So I like to use a lunar blender to do that, and I'm pretty tough on them. You'll find with lunar blenders, they're wonderful to give us that